"Step aside, sweetheart. You're holding up Marines." The voice carried arrogance. The shove carried intent. Christine Sharp's shoulder jerked forward under the sudden force. Her tray jolted, tilting from her grip before slamming against the floor. Water spread in a thin sheet across the shining tiles. A fork bounced twice, then rolled to a stop near the boots of a private who didn't dare move. The silence came fast, too fast. As if the entire hall had been waiting for this exact moment. The young Marine who shoved her smirked, adjusting his stance like he expected applause. "Unbelievable," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Civilians walking in like this is a mall food court." No one laughed. Not a single chuckle rose to support him. Instead, the room held its breath. Christine remained still for a long moment, bent slightly from the impact. The overhead lights cast a faint glow over her silver hair, making it look almost white. She inhaled once through her nose, steady and controlled, then slowly lifted herself upright. A few Marines exchanged glances. Not the kind that asked questions. The kind that feared answers. Christine's boots, worn and soft from years outside the military system, stood out starkly against the rows of polished combat boots surrounding her. And yet she held herself straighter than anyone in the line. Her posture was quiet authority, the kind that didn't need to be announced. The young Marine scoffed again. "Go join the visitor line, ma'am. This one's for active." Ah. His words were cut off by a soft but clear whisper from somewhere behind him. "Someone tells him." Another voice, shakier, followed. "He's already gone too far." Christine didn't acknowledge the whispers. She crouched down, gathering the scattered utensils with slow, deliberate movements. Her hands did not tremble. Her breathing stayed steady. The Marine shifted uncomfortably. His smirk faded. "You hearing me, lady?" She didn't answer. Not yet. A pair of sergeants at a nearby table rose halfway from their seats, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. Their eyes flicked between Christine and the young Marine, as if measuring the weight of the moment. Christine picked up her cup, turning it gently to stop the dripping. Then she stood, her face calm, her expression unreadable. When she finally looked up at the Marine who shoved her, the room stiffened. Her eyes were sharp. Not angry. Not frightened. Just impossibly steady. The Marine took a small step back before catching himself. He forced a smirk. "Ma'am," I said. "You said enough," Christine replied softly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it traveled across the hall like a command. A ripple went through the crowd. A private near the wall leaned toward his friend and whispered the words everyone else was too afraid to say aloud. "That's Colonel Sharp." Color drained from several faces. Because the Marine who shoved her, the one calling her sweetheart, the one treating her like a burden HUD. No idea he had just put his hands on the highest ranking soul in the building, and the consequences were already unfolding. Evelyn Harper never thought she would return to a military base after retirement. At 58, she had built a quiet life far from the noise of barracks and command halls. A life of early morning walks, tending to the small garden her late husband once cherished. An evening spent sorting through old letters she struggled to throw away, but the call had come unexpectedly. A formal request. A voice on the phone reminding her of duty, respect, and the need for someone with her judgment. She had agreed, not for titles or recognition, but because the base was struggling with internal discipline. Someone needed to evaluate the leadership climate. Someone whose rank in history commanded quiet authority. And even in retirement, Evelyn Harper was still that person. When she arrived on base, no announcement was made. No ceremony. No briefing of lower ranks. She stepped through the gates in a plain uniform. The kind without visible rank, something she always preferred when she wanted genuine behavior from those she observed. Her silver hair was tied neatly, her posture straight yet humble. It's a kind of stance that made her blend in rather than stand out. Most young Marines walked past her without a second glance. They saw an older woman, perhaps a spouse, perhaps a visitor. She let them underestimate her. They always did. She had grown used to it. In a way, she needed it. Her life had not been gentle in recent years. Her husband, Captain Michael Harper, had passed away 5 years earlier after a long battle with cancer. The house still held echoes of his laughter, the faint scent of his aftershave lingering in a few forgotten bottles. She kept one of his medals in her pocket, always. A small weight that grounded her, and just a few months ago, she buried her younger brother Thomas. The illness had taken him quickly, too quickly. Evelyn had stayed by his bedside until the final breath, listening to him tell old childhood memories she had almost forgotten. His loss left a quiet ache that followed her everywhere, even into this assignment. But grief had a strange way of sharpening her focus. She walked the base with clear eyes, noticing changes, noticing details others skimmed over. And she saw something troubling within the first hour. A young Marine barking orders with the arrogance of someone who believed he owned the ground beneath him. Staff Sergeant Cole Brant. Tall, built, loud. His voice boomed across the training yard as he snapped at a private struggling with gear. "You move like you're half asleep," he growled, grabbing the strap from the private's hands. "Wake up or go home." He tossed the gear back with unnecessary force. The private flinched. Brant didn't notice, or he didn't care. Evelyn watched from a distance, silent. She took note of Brant's posture, the disdain in his tone, the way he ignored protocol when speaking to those beneath him. She wrote his name in her small notebook. The day continued with minor observations. But Brant's presence kept resurfacing, like a storm forming on the horizon, and Evelyn Harper sensed with the quiet certainty of experience that his behavior was about to cross a line he could never return from. Staff Sergeant Cole Brant had a way of filling a hallway even when he was the only one in it. His voice carried. His footsteps announced his presence, and his attitude, sharp as broken glass, cut into anyone who crossed his path. From the moment he noticed Evelyn Harper walking the base, wearing her plain uniform and quiet expression, she became a target in his eyes. Not because he knew who she was, but because he didn't. Because she looked older, slower, out of place. "Morning, ma'am," he would say with a smirk that curled at the edges. The word ma'am held no respect, only amusement, as if he enjoyed the idea of belittling her without saying anything openly offensive. He stepped into her path more than once, pretending it was accidental. A slow shuffle to the left when she tried to pass on the right. A sudden turn that forced her to stop short. Every gesture was small, but intentional. Little pushes meant to assert dominance. Little reminders of how he treated those he considered unimportant. The younger Marines saw it. They also saw how no one dared step in. Brant carried influence among a certain group. Loud Marines who believed authority came from volume. Those who equated fear with leadership. They copied his tone, his posture, his sneer, and the others, quieter and more traditional, avoided conflict. Slipping into shadows whenever he approached, Evelyn noticed everything. Each insult, each aggressive step, each moment of arrogance. She stayed calm, her hands folded behind her back, her chin lifted in silent dignity. She wrote nothing in her notebook about those small interactions, but she remembered them. All of them. Flashbacks drifted through her mind as she walked the base. She remembered her early years as a young lieutenant, working twice as hard to earn half the recognition. She remembered the long deployments, the nights when mortar fell too close, the days she held grieving Marines who had lost friends. She remembered burying soldiers younger than her own son would have been, had life given her and Michael that gift. Those memories shaped her. They taught her the difference between loud authority and true leadership. They taught her why dignity mattered more than rank alone. Then one afternoon, Brant revealed his true nature in a way no one could ignore. A young Marine named Philip struggled with assembling a field radio. His hands shook slightly. Brant hovered over him like a storm cloud. "Are you kidding me?" Brant barked, snatching the radio from him. A child could put this together faster. Phillips tried to speak, but Brant talked over him. "Maybe we should send you back to orientation. Or maybe just back home." He tossed the radio onto the ground at Philip's feet. It clattered loudly, echoing across the training yard. The young Marine's face reddened. He looked down, swallowing hard. Evelyn watched from a few steps away, her expression unreadable. She didn't move. She didn't interrupt. She simply observed, her silence sharper than any reprimand. Brant noticed her then. His smirk faltered for a heartbeat. Something in her calm unsettled him, though he did not know why. For the first time, he seemed aware that she was not reacting the way others did. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't intimidated, and that made him uneasy. By the end of the week, his irritation grew into hostility. And Harper, quiet and patient, became his next target. The tension built like a storm tightening overhead, waiting for a spark. And that spark arrived in the mess hall. The mess hall was louder than usual that morning. It's filled with the hum of conversations, clattering trays, and the occasional laugh of young Marines. It was ordinary chaos, the kind that felt safe because no one expected anything extraordinary to happen. Staff Sergeant Cole Brant walked through the hall with his usual arrogance. Scanning the room for someone to assert himself over, his eyes landed on her, Evelyn Harper. To him, she was just another older woman in a uniform that didn't quite command attention. Just another obstacle in his path. "Out of the way, ma'am," he sneered, his voice loud enough to cut through the chatter. His tray jostled as he shoved her shoulder, a sharp, deliberate motion meant to unbalance. To dominate? To remind her that in his mind she did not belong. Her tray tipped slightly. A cup rolled across the floor. Water splashed in a thin arc, hitting the polished tiles with a soft splash. A fork skidded to a stop against a nearby boot. The mess hall fell silent in an instant. Conversations died mid-word. Forks hovered in the air. Even the cooks behind the serving line paused, knives in hand. Brant smirked, clearly expecting reactions of shock or indignation. "Watch it, lady," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Next time, maybe stay out of the way of real Marines." No one spoke. They simply stared. Christine, no. Colonel Harper remained calm. Her movements were deliberate, controlled, unhurried. She bent down slowly, gathering her scattered tray. Her hands did not shake. She picked up the cup and set it upright. She brushed off her uniform with quiet dignity, her silver hair catching the overhead light. She stood tall, facing Brant, her eyes steady and piercing. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath. "You should learn the meaning of respect," she said softly, her voice calm yet carrying an authority that made the young Marine falter. Her tone was measured, deliberate, but each word hit like a hammer. Brant opened his mouth to respond, to scoff or threaten. Before he could, a young private leaned toward him and whispered words that made the color drain from his face. "That woman. She outranks everyone in this hall." "Colonel Harper." Brant froze. His bravado crumbled instantly. The smirk vanished. His hands shook slightly as he realized the full weight of what he had done. The entire hall watched, wrapped in tense, as the truth settled over him. Colonel Harper's gaze did not waver. Her calmness was now a weapon. She stepped closer, her voice firm but controlled. "Follow me. We are going to discuss your behavior in a private room now." Brant swallowed hard, his mouth opening as if to argue, but no words came. He followed her silently, each step heavy with disbelief and fear. The hall remained frozen, every Marine silently acknowledging what had just happened. The weight of her authority. Pressing down without a single raised voice or raised hand, the door to the private office closed behind them. A quiet but unmistakable sound that marked the end of Brant's unchecked arrogance. Outside, the mess hall remained still, tension hanging in the air. Every Marine knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would be remembered long after that day. And somewhere, deep within that calm, Colonel Harper allowed herself the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. The storm had begun. The door clicked shut behind them. The private office was small, sterile, and quiet, its stillness a stark contrast to the chaos of the mess hall. Brant stood rigid, chest rising and falling rapidly. His face, once smug, had drained of color. For the first time, he seemed small. Colonel Evelyn Harper turned to face him fully. No softness in her expression, no trace of hesitation. Her voice was steady, calm. but every word carried the weight of decades of experience. "You do not understand," she said quietly. "Who you have just shoved in front of an entire hall." Brant's eyes darted around the room, searching for a way to escape the truth he had ignored. I didn't know," he stammered, the bravado failing him completely. "I am Colonel Evelyn Harper," she said, her words precise. "I have served in this corps for over 30 years. I have deployed 2 conflicts you cannot imagine. I have watched comrades die. I have lost my husband, and more recently, my brother. And I have done it all without needing to intimidate, to bully, or to feel powerful at the expense of others." Her calmness, her quiet authority, pressed on him harder than any yell could have. He looked down, shame flooding his face, a flush of heat rising to his ears. "You seem to believe that leadership comes from force, from sarcasm, from making others feel small. You are wrong," she continued. "True leadership comes from respect, from guidance, from holding others up, not pushing them down." Brant's hands trembled slightly. He opened his mouth to reply, but no words came. Harper didn't give him the chance. She leaned slightly forward, her gaze unwavering. "I have observed your behavior for days. Your pattern of intimidation, the way you humiliate younger Marines, the way you think fear makes you respected, it ends here. You will be removed from your position immediately. A formal disciplinary report will be filed. Your actions have consequences, as they always do." Brant sank into the chair across from her, defeated. He whispered the words he could not speak aloud before. I didn't think you thought wrong." Harper interrupted gently, yet firmly. "You assumed that your strength made you untouchable. You assumed the rules did not apply to you. You assumed respect could be commanded through cruelty. That assumption has cost you everything in this room." For a long moment, neither spoke. Brant's eyes were downcast. His chest heaved as he processed the weight of her words, the moral gravity of his actions. Harper straightened. "You will learn what it means to serve properly. You will learn the meaning of responsibility. And you will carry this lesson with you, whether you like it or not." The room seemed smaller now, the air heavier. Brant's defiance had evaporated completely, replaced by the raw vulnerability of someone confronted with undeniable truth. Harper picked up a file and placed it on the table. "This is your report. Sign it. Accept it. And understand, authority is not given by force. It is earned through wisdom and respect." Brant's hand shook as he reached for the pen. Outside, the base was buzzing with quiet whispers. No one had yet reacted publicly to the incident, but Harper knew the story would travel quickly. How the Marines would respond, how the culture would shift. She could only wait. And as the office door closed behind the disciplinary action, one truth lingered in the air: nothing on this base would ever be the same. Chapter 6: Aftermath and Reflection. A lesson the base never forgot. 500 words by the following morning. The news had spread across the base like wildfire. Staff Sergeant Cole Brant had been demoted and reassigned. The halls whispered his name with a mixture of shock, relief, and quiet satisfaction. Few doubted that the day had shifted the balance of authority in ways no one could ignore. Marines who had once avoided Harper now approached her with deferential nods and careful words. Younger soldiers lingered nearby, offering quiet smiles of gratitude, gestures that carried more weight than applause. Some of the privates who had witnessed Brant's cruelty approached her with hesitant voices. "I'm sorry," one whispered. "I should have spoken up sooner." Harper shook her head gently, a faint, almost imperceptible smile brushing her lips. "You did what you could at the time. Learn from it. That is what matters." The day unfolded with a sense of calm restored to the base. Orders were carried out with renewed clarity, and the younger Marines worked with an awareness that respect could not be demanded through fear alone. Harper continued her evaluation quietly, walking through the barracks, observing leadership patterns and noting improvements. Her presence brought a subtle but lasting shift. Discipline, balanced with dignity. When her work concluded, she took a solitary walk to the memorial wall. The sun was low, painting the scene in gold and amber. Names etched in stone glimmered faintly in the evening light. Her husband, Michael, and her brother Thomas among them. She stood quietly before the memorial, placing her hand gently against the cool stone. "I did what I could today," she whispered softly. They needed someone to remind them, to show them that strength is measured in respect, not intimidation. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the quiet presence of her lost loved ones. The grief she had carried for years settled into a steady ache, softened by the knowledge that her actions had left a meaningful mark. The younger Marines would carry the lessons she had enforced, and the culture of the base had shifted toward accountability, empathy, and integrity. As she stepped back, Harper reflected on what had transpired. She thought of Brant, humbled and forced to confront his own flaws. She thought of the Marines who had been silent too long and of the ones who had dared to step forward. She thought of herself and the quiet power she had wielded without raising her voice. Strength, she realized, did not need to shout. Authority did not require cruelty. Wisdom was earned in silence, in patience, in measured action. She had reminded the base that day that respect is not demanded, it is given, nurtured, and recognized by those who understand its value. Evelyn Harper walked away from the memorial slowly, her steps deliberate, unhurried. The wind brushed against her face, carrying the soft murmur of the base settling into evening. Power without respect is hollow. Authority without wisdom is fragile, and the kind of strength that never needs to raise its voice. That kind of strength was the kind that endured forever. The base would remember that lesson for years to come, and so would she.